And good afternoon. I am really thrilled to be joined by the head coach of the 2021 CCIW champions, Ron Rose of the Illinois Wesleyan Titans. Coach Rose, thanks so much for making the time to join me today.
But it's great seeing you again, Q. It seems like a short time, yet a lifetime ago that we did this. I don't know, what month did we do this? Was that in?
It's funny. I was thinking about that myself. It was January 18th, and we left that as, hey, let's do this every week or so. And I'm gonna tell you why we didn't do this is because once we got into the season, it was so stressful for me watching it as a fan. I was like, I'm not calling Coach Rose. This is going to be. I remember the Carroll game. We won the opener.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, let's do an interview with Coach Rose after the second Carroll game. So that gets canceled.
Yeah.
And there's all this stuff going on, and I'm getting words about positives and false positives and Elmhurst and Augie. I just said, you know what? I'm going to talk to Coach Rose when the season ends and leave him alone.
I think I probably can put more of a coherent conversation with you right now compared to when we were, in the trenches and kind of going through the season. And no one's going to forget this season for a long time. That's for certain.
And talk a little bit about that, if you would, because in all seriousness, it was stressful from just a fan's perspective every game day, trying to send a text to a person or two saying, do you know if the Titans got on the bus? Do you know if this team is heading south from Chicago on a bus? What was it like playing through a pandemic and everything that was required this season?
I think a lot of the coaches, college coaches, probably high school coaches' mantra was stay positive, test negative. I mean, that was, you just had to stay positive through it. There were clearly ups and downs. Twice we found out the day of the game that it was canceled. We were, as a coach, you try to prime your team the night before, you break, you're ready to go the next day. And this group always was ready to go. And to find out, I think it was an hour before we were going to load a bus one time that it was canceled. And, and I've said this, and this group, and I think typically at Illinois Wesleyan, you've got pretty mature kids. And I think we handled it about as well as you possibly could. I did feel like towards the end of the season, it was starting to take its toll on us emotionally. One thing that I think is true, and any of the players on the team or former players can attest this, I love practice. I mean, I love practice. One of my favorite parts of being a college basketball coach is those 2 hours, they would say 2.5 probably, those 2 hours that you get to work with your guys. And I think that's where you really build relationship, form your team. We practiced a lot this year. Even for me, that love of practice is tested because, a lot of times players talk about the preseason, what a grind it is. We had about a 10-week, 12-week preseason. Then you're not playing games for 10 days in stretches. And so we practiced a lot. And I loved it. I think we as a team, you could see we kept getting better. Certainly our team's development was stunted to some degree because you didn't have the games to highlight where you had to get better. You never got in that game rhythm.
Right.
But our guys, man, I give them so much credit to grind through the number of practices and to stay ready and to get the rug pulled out from under you and then come back the next day for practice. It's one of the things I look back. If I knew when we were having the breaks, I would have given our guys off more time. But because of the uncertainty, we kept practicing and you're getting ready for that next game. Well, then the game didn't happen. And so then you had to get ready for the next one because you had to anticipate you were going to play. And it was a challenge, but this is a group of fun guys. I think that was really key, that you had to have a group that was enjoyed each other's company, enjoyed the game of basketball, and through it all, it was I think it was really a positive experience. So blessed and fortunate we got to play.
And just talk a little bit, if you would, Ron, about what it took for your team to be able to test negative and play basketball games. We talked in January about you can contract the virus without doing anything wrong. You just kind of
Correct.
wrong place, wrong time. But to actively try to test negative, that takes a lot of work. What was it like for your team to go about this season knowing that they had to test negative before every game in order to get on the bus?
Yeah, there's a mental toll to that. The coming in testing 3 times a week. And I told the nurses that have been doing it, I'm going to miss their nose massages, 3 days a week, and then waiting to see if they come back negative. I mean, there is just that angst wears on you over time. I agree with you 100% that you could do nothing wrong. You go to class and you come in contact with the virus. I mean, it's airborne. You have no control of that. But I will say this, the only thing you could do is try to be as safe as possible. That you had to sacrifice doing some things that maybe you normally would do, places you normally would go, social opportunities you normally would have. And I really believe our group sacrificed greatly in terms of we asked them to lock themselves in the room, come out when necessary. And I think our group did that as much as possible, as much as reasonable, that they wanted to play. And I know I felt that way. I felt a huge burden to not be the one that contracted the coronavirus,
Right.
even though you got to go to the grocery store, you have to get food, but at the same time, I masked up. I stayed away from people. Became paranoid because I thought, gosh, I don't want to be the one that shuts us down. And I know all our guys carried that burden. I mean, that's quite a burden. That there's a lot of stress feeling like I don't want to be the one, even though it wouldn't necessarily be your fault. And so we did not have one person in our program contract the coronavirus from the time basketball started in October. How phenomenal. Very fortunate.
It's amazing. I think we should underscore that. I mean, again, if you get the virus, it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong, but to
Right.
not have a single legitimate positive that whole time your team was together, that for sure means that guys went out of their way to make good decisions. Is that fair to say?
I think that's a good way of saying it, Bob. I think they really did. They made the tough decisions, and and like you said, it wouldn't. We had the one week where we had 6 false positives. They ended up being, I guess, indeterminate. I was one of them. And when I got that phone call, I'm racking my brain. I was like, I haven't seen anybody. I haven't been here. How can this be? And that was a pretty stressful few days because we were on lockdown, and you're sitting there and you're going through how could this possibly be the case? And fortunately, it wasn't. And we got to get back on the court, I think, 3 days later.
That was the week, by the way, that I decided that we would just wait to a post-game interview. I was like, I'm not calling them right now.
In all honesty, even when we were going through that, we have a Zoom meeting as a team, and I think how you handled it as a group, no one was mad, it was disappointing, but how do you handle disappointment? And what some great life lessons I think these guys learned through this difficult season.
The amazing thing to me is with all the starts and stops, and I can't remember the totals of games that the league played, but at one point Elmhurst was out about a month and then they flew by in games played. So you played near the least in the league, if not the least total, but yet every time you guys took the floor, I mean, you were playing high level, top 5 type basketball. If I look at some of the statistics, you shot 501 from the field. You held opponents to 405. You scored 78 a game. You held opponents to 64. Shot 410 from 3, and you had a rebound margin of +7. Those are the kind of numbers when you look at a national championship team at the end of the year and you look at their box score, those are the kind of numbers that you see. Pretty amazing performance on the floor over the course of the season.
You're going to win a lot of games with those numbers.
Yes.
It was, yeah, part of it was we ended up playing 6 games in the regular season. We had 12 scheduled. Some teams played 12. And North Park actually was able to get a 13th game in. I think Elmhurst had 7. So we had the fewest games. The excitement level, it was like we had 6 first games of the season. Just how excited we got the uniform on when you knew you were negative, you knew they were negative, and you knew you're getting. It was just there was another level of energy just because you were embracing that opportunity. Now, to play as well as this group did is hard. I mean, you think about usually over Christmas time, you give a week off, you practice. You expect teams that aren't playing over a 10-day period to be rusty. I mean, that's the natural inclination. And I'll attest to this. I think there were elements of that in each game. I think it did hamper what this team, where it could have gotten, we'll never know. But there's no doubt it hampered our development. But I think what overcame that was just playing so hard, being so excited for the opportunity, hanging together as a group, embracing the opportunity. I think that really showed when we hit the floor. And even though maybe we weren't perfect in our execution, I think the effort was always, and I think this group really understood, man, we get to play tonight. We may not get to play for another week or 2 weeks let's embrace every opportunity.
You kind of had an interesting setup with your rotation, and that game to game when I signed on to the stream, I never quite knew what the starting lineup was going to be, and I kind of found that to be cool. You always had Luke Yoder as your point guard and Pete Lambesis as your 3 and Matt Laritz as the 4. But I think as an opposing coach, preparing for Keandre Schumacher and Corey Noah is different, and preparing for Doug Wallen and Charlie Bear is different at the 4. Was it intentional that you were flip-flopping the lineup based on matchups, or what were those decisions like where you were making those decisions?
Well, one, we had guys that I thought we had 7 legitimate, maybe even 8 legitimate guys who could start. And I felt like they all deserved that opportunity to start with. And then strategically, we did say, if usually when you're doing a game plan, you're saying, hey, here's your matchup. Here's what they're good at. If you could guard Schumacher, you could guard Noah, you could guard Lambesis. We had coaches waiting there at the 10-minute mark. Coach Etheridge always checked them in, and he'd tell them the starters at 10. They were anxiously waiting to hear who's starting. I really do believe had we played a normal season, we would have had more different lineups. I really wanted to throw Doug Wallen at the 3 some, because a year ago he started the 3 for a short time when we had everybody in place health-wise, and we were really good. So that was one I was really kind of wanting to throw out there at some point and talk about a different team to prepare for. So I think this group's versatility, its ability to we had different lineups on the floor, looked different ways, was really a strength and hard to guard.
One of the things I joked around with people as the season played out was this felt like a Denny Bridges rotation to me, because I'm used to watching 10, 11 guys on the floor the last decade. And boy, by the time that Wheaton game came around, that felt like a 7-man rotation. I guess that was because every game was the Super Bowl. There was no experiment time. Is that why the rotation ended up being so much tighter this year?
And I didn't plan it that way. I honestly don't prefer it that way. We didn't get our 9 non-conference games. I really do wish we would have had opportunity to give more guys more opportunity to see what we look like with different rotations out there. But you're right. I mean, it was so condensed, and I'll say this. I mean, we were, or I don't know what we are. I guess the season's over. We were a team still developing. we still hadn't totally found ourselves. A young man like Cody Mitchell gets hurt towards the end of the season. You never have the opportunity to get hurt and then play yourself back into the rotation, because now you're in the conference tournament. We played a third of our games in the season in the last 6 days.
That's right.
It doesn't even make sense. We had 6 leading up to it. We played 3 in 6 days. And so you don't have time to work through some of those things to, there's an ebb and flow of every season. There's ups and downs for players. Sometimes you're playing well. Sometimes you go through a little bit of a slump. You play yourself out of it. You lose confidence. You have time to build up that confidence. And this year, there was none of this. Like a Major League Baseball season, you're going to play 9 games. Well, Javi started really rough last year. Well, you're going to hit your way out of it. We didn't have time to hit our way out of it. It just because of how condensed it was in the few games, didn't allow us to develop what we normally, because we had a deep team. We've got guys who could contribute. It was just kind of a situational thing.
I want to ask you about the Wheaton game in a second, but first I want to go to the game at North Park, the one loss of the season. And, a lot of people, since I voted in the national top 25 poll, coming to me saying that sounds like a bad loss. And first of all, I thought North Park was a really good team. If they had hit a turnaround 15-footer at the buzzer, they would have beat Wheaton up there.
They were in a lot of games. They were in a lot of games down there.
And as I watched the game, even watched parts of it back, I didn't think we played poorly. I thought North Park played great, and I thought they hit some crazy, well-defended, tough shots. What were your impressions? I didn't get a chance to talk to you afterwards. Your thoughts of that game up in Chicago?
Well, as a coach, you always look at the game film and you figure out areas you could have done better. And certainly we could have played better. That was during a stretch, to be honest, where I was really concerned that the season had taken its toll. We hadn't practiced as well. I didn't think we played as well from the sense of we missed a lot of shots we normally make at the basket. We had a few defensive breakdowns that we normally wouldn't have. So there was in my mind, I was concerned, or has this really, is this taking its toll on us emotionally, our focus level? That being said, North Park was a dynamic team that you're exactly right. I thought they were playing inspired. It was senior night. It's a team that when it got rolling had a lot of offensive firepower. They hit some Toby Merrick a step back with Pete in his face. The last shot, that wasn't an easy shot to make, but by the Osborne kid in the corner, I give them full credit. I do not want to take anything away from them because they played a great basketball game and deserved to win. But I was concerned with our team at that time. That was a point where we'd actually had more games canceled than we'd played. And I was worried. And we talked as a team about that. Not now. We'd been through 15 weeks of practice and played 5 games. And I was telling our guys, hey, you guys have been too good for too long. Let's not give into it. And I tell you what, maybe the best thing that happened to us, because it really snapped us out of it and came back in those last, week or two of practice leading through the conference tournament were phenomenal.
Then you get a chance at North Park right away again. So you open with them in the tournament. You play well, you beat them, you get Coach Baines and the Blue Jays. That middle 20 minutes against Elmhurst, that was pretty impressive. I mean, watching that, I had people texting me saying, it was kind of sad because it was more like, wow, I'm so sad there's not a tournament because that looks like a national championship contender. That Elmhurst game for that middle 20 minutes or however many it was, that was pretty good basketball. Unbelievable execution on both ends of the floor, those middle 20. And that game was really fun. That was, that felt like a tournament game. That felt like, the intensity level was just cranked up. And part of it was, a replay of the conference championship the year before. Both teams knew each other, both teams playing to get into the championship game. And
we got into halftime, and that's what we said, man, how much fun was that? Our guys were just pumped up at just the intensity level of that. Every possession you had to be locked in, or you're gonna, they were gonna score. But those middle 20, wow, pretty special middle 20 in terms of how we defended, and then offensively how we executed as well. And that is, it's interesting. You win the championship against Wheaton, and there's that excitement of winning, but there was also a sadness. At least I experienced it, that it's over. And what could we have done given the opportunity? But I guess I think our guys were really good about this, and I think we didn't know if we were going to get to play it all, and embrace what we got to do, and enjoy the fact that this group really accomplished a lot in a short time.
And talk about that Wheaton game a little bit, because that was exciting. That whole atmosphere. You had Wheaton, which was deservedly ranked number 3 in the country at that point. They were undefeated. You'd played them in a scrimmage basically to a draw back in early January. So you knew them a little bit. You knew they were good. So it was number 8 versus number 3. Great CCIW matchup. It's for the title. Now that game there's no one in the stands, maybe 2-3 people. That felt intense watching a stream. I mean, you mentioned the Elmhurst game felt intense. Isn't it funny how, with no one in the stands, those games were every bit as intense as if there was 2,000 people there?
Yeah, we said that, in a normal year, whether it was played at King Arena or the Shirk Center, it would have been a packed gym, and it would have been the energy would have been off the charts. But I think both teams had gone through so much, and really kind of felt like during the season we were on a crash course towards each other. I was so glad that we got to play that game, and we knew how good Wheaton was. They are that. We talk about we could advance in the tournament. Yeah, they're the exact same thing. I mean, and in a lot of ways, our two groups mirrored each other. I mean, we could score inside, had big, strong post players. We had athletic guards on the perimeter. I mean, it was two really quality teams playing high level basketball, and with the championship on the line. And it was great to get off to such a good start in that game. But we had talked about this. When you play a game of that magnitude against an opponent, there's going to be runs by both teams, and they squelched our momentum, gained some of their own. We didn't give into it. It was just a great game to be a part of. What a wonderful way to end the season in the year where you don't get a national championship, you get to play it in a game of that at that level. And we have a lot of respect for Wheaton. Gosh darn, they had a great season. They have a great team. It was one where you do walk away and say it's a shame someone had to lose, because that was just a great college basketball game.
That was a game where a lot of probably typical Ron Rose Titan basketball, you had so many guys that contributed to that win. I thought, to me, the defense in a big game moment, I believe it's the best team defense that I can remember seeing Illinois Wesleyan play in that kind of environment. Just talk about Luke Yoder and Pete Lambesis and Charlie Bear down. Just talk about that defensive group that you had this year that embraced that side of the floor.
Well, we kind of became a little bit of a smash mouth basketball team on the defensive end, where, sometimes offensively, we weren't just going to blow you away with our offense, but our defense was going to consistently battle you. And I thought we had 3 elite defenders in Luke, Pete, and Charlie. I mean, elite, as good as you're going to find at our level. And then everybody else bought into it too. That everybody else understood. And I think Luke, what we really preached when we looked at actually that scrimmage was him setting the tone. And Luke, you got to set the tone. And he did. I mean, talk about a supremely conditioned athlete. I mean, Luke Yoder's out there 32, 34 minutes a game, picking up full court. And he just set an incredible tone to our whole defensive possession. Nothing, I think he started where it wasn't even easy to advance the ball up the court. And one of our goals was let's not make it easy for him to do anything, whether it was the next pass, feeding the post, driving it in the paint. Let's make everything hard. And this group really embraced that. Pete, what a unique defender he is because he's 6'4" and athletic. And he just played so hard. I think if you look at his 3 years, he came in with a defensive reputation, but has gotten better every year. And then Charlie, that's his thing. That's where Charlie really contributes the highest levels on the defensive end. And he just covers up so much behind him. He communicates on that back row. He's taking charges. He's rotating over. He's walling up. He's just protecting the basket. Even though he's not necessarily a rim protector in terms of blocking shots, you're not going to get uncontested layups against us very often. And so I think our group hung its hat on the defensive end. There were periods in a lot of games where we went through some dry spells offensively, but didn't give up big runs because our defense played consistently.
Well, and the Wheaton game was the perfect example. After we got off to that big lead, things were quiet there for a long time, but we really were still hanging in there. I think Wheaton caught up, tied the game, maybe went ahead at 1 point or two, but that was a game where defense kept you in it. And then the final, I think we took the lead for good, maybe with 9-ish minutes to play. And there were a couple guys that stood out down that stretch. You had Matt Larrett's on the bench with 4 fouls. Pete Lambesis is on the bench. I thought Doug Wallen hit some big shots in big moments where you were maybe up 2 or you were tied or up 4. And it just seemed like that was one of those moments where a senior was ready to roll at the right moment.
Well, I think on any really good team, you have to have multiple guys with the ability to step up. And then in key moments, it can't always be Matt Larrett's. It can't always be your leading scorer. You need other guys that make a big play. And Doug has done that consistently in his career. And he did. He hit some huge shots. I thought that was a tough matchup for Wheaton because he's more of a perimeter player playing the 4. And so he's on the, he's out on the perimeter a lot. And that was tough for Wheaton to guard, I thought. And Corey, I know another one you're going to mention is Corey No down the stretch, hit some huge shots. His 3 was the one that really extended the lead, was going to make it tough for Wheaton to come back. How often in modern basketball do you win a game of a championship game and make 3 threes in the game? I mean, we didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but boy, that was a big one when we hit it. That was a backbreaker, I think.
And that was the second year in a row that in the conference tournament that Corey No really was a star player. I mean, the shots he hit a kind of a spinning shot going into the lane. He hit about like a 12-foot baseline shot right in front of your bench. And then the 3 that made it 7-10 was really the dagger. What a luxury. I mean, here you've got Keandre Schumacher, who's one of the top 3-4 in the country in 3-point percentage at one shooting guard spot. And Corey No comes in and, well, he's got a little bit of a kind of a closer, big game mentality to him when he gets in there.
Yeah, they're different. They have different games. I mean, it goes back to, like you mentioned, the matchups. I mean, if you're a defender, how are you going to guard us? Who are you going to put your best defender on? I just think we were a difficult team to guard because the guys on the floor, that's what we always say. We want 5 guys on the floor who are all offensive threats. And we want all 5 guys involved in the offense. And we want to play ridiculously unselfishly with 5 talented guys on the floor. And I thought this group embraced that.
And then just the culmination of that game, you could really see on the video stream the emotion when the buzzer sounded. That was probably a little bit of an exhale, a little bit of jubilation. It seemed like a very emotional end of the game and probably had to do a lot with everything the guys went through this year. Is that fair to say?
I think that is very fair to say. You and I had talked, we were in conversation with different teams and opportunities to maybe play afterwards, and we never really found the right opportunity that made sense. And a big part of it was our guys were so focused laser focused once this tournament started that we wanted to do everything we could to be in a position to win the championship. And anything else to them felt like a little bit of a letdown, and we didn't want to do that. And so we knew this was it. You know, I didn't know Doug Wallen had said that till I read his quote from, maybe it was to Randy Reinhardt, or I don't know where it was. This was our national championship. And even though that was never verbalized to me, that I didn't know that was the thinking, you could tell, hey, this is it. You know, that the last practice, how often do you know this is our last practice? You know, and the seniors are kind of looking around the Shirk Center, and you know, it's always emotional when at the end of the year and the end of a team. Every team's different, and all the dynamics and the chemistry, and this group really embraced. They wanted this tournament. You know, this was the crown jewel of this season, and the biggest opportunity we're going to have. And certainly it was kind of the storybook ending for this year's team.
And I do agree with that when you think about playing games after the Wheaton game, it would have to be a pretty special game to make that the right thing to do, because in a league like the CCIW, winning that title, that is a huge deal. That is something you focus on. So you go play the Wheaton game with all that emotion. It just probably wouldn't make sense to go play a so-so game, you know, a game where you don't have anything on the line with that opponent except maybe they're ranked in the poll or something. I mean, it would have to be, you'd have to be getting Randolph Macon or Yeshiva or somebody to make it feel as big as the Wheaton game did. And I still don't know that it would have felt that big.
Well, it would not have been as big. I mean, conference play is conference play. I mean, it's just, you know each other better. You are usually in a season, you play your non-conference. It doesn't matter what level you play, how good they are. You're playing a top 20 team. It's different than when you tee it up against a conference opponent. You know each other so much better, and so it had to have been the exact right fit. And you know, we didn't find it necessarily. And so, yeah, it escalated. You know, we told the team that, hey, this is it. This is, and they were 100% on board. It's really what they wanted. And so it was great way to end the season, no question. It was kind of weird not having fans there. You know, you kind of celebrate, you cut down the net, and then we're all kind of standing there. Right. Usually you'd be interacting with your friends, your family, and it was like, well, you know, that was it. So it was kind of a weird ending to that. But this group, again, sincerely likes each other. And I think, again, I think that is one of the great things about Illinois Wesleyan basketball. And you can attest to this from being a part of it for so many years. We've got a great culture here. I know culture is used a lot. Guys like each other. Guys are great friends with each other. They enjoy being on the team together, going to lunch together, whatever it is. And so when you can share it with some of your best friends, it makes it very special. And so getting through the pandemic, when you're getting through it with some of your best friends, guys you love hanging out with on and off the court, I do think we had a little bit easier maybe than teams that don't feel that way about each other. And so it's one of the things I think that we've always embraced at Illinois Wesleyan, was critical to our team's success this year.
Another thing I thought was cool about that game, I think we've always had a very good rivalry with Wheaton in a very positive, healthy way. I know that when I was right out of school, those games in 95 and 6 and 7, the Chris Simich Crabtree era games against the Nadelhofer, Senex Senef teams, that's the highest level Division III basketball that I've seen in the years around. And I think the rivalry with Wheaton, when I think of the Kent Raymonds and the Aston Francis and the Tim McCrary and Joel Quillman, and when the buzzer sounded, Mike Schauer does an interview within seconds. Like, they have him there at the scores table. And I don't think you would have seen this, but I put this out on Twitter. The first thing he said, you know, hey, tell us about the game. He said, I don't want to go there. I want to say this first, is I really respect this rivalry. I respect Ron. Boy, he said a lot of very gracious things. And I got to thinking, that's what Coach Shower is saying is probably the reason that I do what I do with our program and with the league and Division III, because I don't think you get that in Division I or other places. I don't know if any of that got back to you, but I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I got several people mentioned it, and so I had a chance, and I really appreciate Coach Howard saying those things, and it is a mutual respect. I could have said the exact same thing about the program he runs, the young men that play in their program, and how he does it, and the type of man he is. So I do think that's one of the great things about, you're right, Division III. There's tends to be more perspective. And maybe not quite as cutthroat at other places, where you can really sit back and appreciate um, the class that Wheaton showed, and how Mike said those things, as well as the talent, and appreciate the rivalry. It is a rivalry, and it's great. I mean, that's what makes CCIW basketball. There are so many good schools and so many good programs. I know as a coach, I have so much respect for the coaching ability around the league, that it brings out the best in you. And I think at our level, you can appreciate that from other people as well. And so those were incredibly nice things he said, especially in the moment, to be able to do that. And I think it's a rivalry that does have mutual respect. For
Agree. Just a couple more things as we start to wrap up. You have 4 seniors that are leaving the program, 2 that were very instrumental on the floor this year. You had Grant Wolf, who obviously was very instrumental last year. And then I think, Colin Chaney, a guy that I've heard the term used, a program guy, a guy that, wasn't on the floor as much as he probably wanted to, or when he committed to Illinois Wesleyan, he probably saw a different role, but a guy that was there until the very end. Just talk a little bit about your senior group and what you're missing with those 4.
Yeah, what a tremendous group, and I probably sound like I say it every year, but you really miss these guys when you spend 4 years together. You work, you set goals, and then they graduate, and it's a difficult, it's always a difficult transition. But these 4 guys, Grant Wolf, what a tremendous young man, obviously talented basketball player, but for him to go through what he did and be as all in as he was, like he's in it. He couldn't have been more intense in the Wheaton game if he was in a uniform. He wanted it for his teammates, and I value it. I mean, often, hey, what do you see, Grant? What? And he's coming down. Hey, coach. He had such a great feel for how we play, and I've joked his dad. He's going to work with his dad after graduation. As I'm trying to get him to stick around and coach with me. I mean, guy's got a great basketball mind, and there's no question in my mind we would not have been as good without him. Oftentimes in practice, he's there and he's teaching. Part of Luke Yoder's success is attributed directly to Grant Wolf, as well as there are different guys when they struggle. Hey, Grant, you talk to them today in practice. You give them, and he's just phenomenal. I mean, I can't say enough good things about Grant Wolf. Colin Chaney, boy, I have a soft spot for guys that are in Colin's role, that are program guys, that come to practice every day, that make your team better. I've always said they are the fabric that truly defines your program. If you don't have Colin Chaney in your program, you aren't as good a program. You aren't as he gets it. He gets what it means to be part of a team, and he was unselfish. He was into it. You watch the sideline of when we're playing, and tell me that Colin Chaney wasn't a huge part of why we won against Wheaton. You watch him, and in freshmen, sophomores, juniors, see Colin Chaney. A year ago was Bernie Coderre. And those guys are the strength of your program completely. So I really value Colin. He and I joke, I was a math major, he's a math major. We were math nerds together, man. And there was a common bond there. And then you go to the, Doug and Charlie that served as our captains this year. Doug's been playing since he was a freshman, and every year you just saw him get a little bit better. And I'll go back to Dougie Wallen is the most positive guy you're ever going to be around. There were times it made me mad because I was mad and he was positive. I wanted him to be mad, but he was the guy that always lifted up guys. And during a year like this, you can't have enough Doug Wallens in your program. And he was always the guy that if someone was down, you knew he was going to pick them up. And so I'm going to miss Doug, just his positive attitude. And then you got Charlie. He was that high motor, competitive, hardworking guy. As he got older, he had more of a voice, which is exactly what I love about this job. That as you move along in our program, you understand what it's about. And you get more and more of a voice. And so Charlie had a big voice on this year's team, and certainly a lot of our personality, how we played was how Charlie played. And so we're going to miss those four guys greatly. Certainly excited for all the players that are returning, and have, the table set for an exciting 21-22, but I'm so thankful that I got to coach those four guys for 4 years and appreciate everything they've done as Titans.
Yeah, they were a really strong four. Doug, it always amazed me, his, unique ability in the mid-range jump shot. To 15-footer pull-ups with a guy right in your face, it had the highest release I've ever seen. And just the skill that Doug had in the mid-range. Obviously, Grant showed what he could do in 7 games last year. He was probably a MOP type candidate had he played all year. I always joke with Colin Chaney that seemed like every time he got in the game, he tried to dunk a basketball, which I like.
Bouncy.
He's a bouncy 6'4" kid that I swore was always trying to dunk it. And then, Charlie, I have a really short list of my favorite players of all time. And I always tell people that I never list the guys on the team. I just say that John Camaradell is the captain. And I, Charlie joined that team for me. There's a very small group of guys, and they're not the Corey Coons and Brian Crabtree. They're not the superstars. These are the guys that were underrated, that played the game the right way. And I loved watching Charlie. I think maybe he'd be an All-American if he can make all of the shots right around the basket that he should have. But boy, was he a pleasure to watch. And as a fan, I'll miss the four of those guys. Just, let's wrap it up this way. And just, boy, next year you have 80 of your top 10 returning. And you have several beyond that could have been in the rotation this year. So if you look at the program and where the depth is right now, even with those 4 seniors leaving, this is about as deep as it's been in a while. And you got to be pretty excited about what next year brings with what you have coming back here.
Well, certainly I think we're set up for success from we've got great kids in the program, talented basketball players, good students, high character guys. All the elements are there. They love playing basketball. They're going to work at it. That was one thing we haven't mentioned is, a lot of the success of this team occurred when we're at stay-at-home orders. If they sat around and didn't improve their bodies, all those things that were required to have a good season, these guys did on their own, spring, summer, and fall. We've got guys like that in our program that love to play, that are workers. They like the process. Some guys like to play, some guys like to work. We got a lot of workers. And I think that usually results in good things once you get together as a team. I think we've got quality players in each of the program, or each of the classes. We've got quality freshmen, quality sophomores, quality juniors that are ready to work and take on bigger roles. We are excited about the possibility of the guys that will be joining our program. So It's a exciting time for Titan basketball. I really do believe that. We're hoping that this championship this year just is the beginning of some great things for next year and in the future.
And boy, the guys embrace the weight room. I'll tell you that. I remember the first photo of this team I saw right when you started practicing. There was a picture, and there's a big beast of a kid with talking with Andy, Coach Etheridge, and I sent Andy a text and I said, who's that guy you're talking to? I thought there might be one of these walk-ons from the football program that was a good high school player, maybe a linebacker kid. I said, who is that? He goes, that's Pete Lambesis. And I go, we're going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Because I tweeted this out, a photo of Pete not 3 years ago as a high school player. I'm talking 1 year ago, February 28th against Augustana and against Wheaton a couple days ago. He's a beast. I mean, these guys embraced the weight room.
But it's not just the change in the hairstyle.
Right.
Pete threw out the pandemic hair this year, which added to the whole change. But oh yeah, I mean it's remarkable what they did individually, and then when we were able to get together and start doing our team strength and conditioning, they got to work, and the discipline in terms of eating and what they're putting into their bodies is phenomenal. It's the new age athlete. They're so much more health conscious than the crew that I played with back at Wesleyan. Eating pizza and drinking soda and stuff. These guys are doing everything they can to put themselves and the team in the best position to win. But it's amazing. I mean, you can go up and down the line in terms of the work these guys did in the off season, and that's also one of the things that gets you excited about the future. Is that there are guys in the program that are going to continue to lead and show the young guys what's required to be successful.
Well, it was a great year, Ron. So CCIW championship, what a huge deal for Illinois Wesleyan and Illinois Wesleyan fans. Amazing to watch this season play out, even though it was very stressful, even from a fan's perspective. When you think of the returning talent, and we'll have another little podcast on this when it's all said and done, but boy, you're going to have a great recruiting class. There's already some great kids that have committed. There's some others you're working on now. And so we'll talk recruits, but there probably hasn't been a time this exciting for an IW fan in a while, and that's saying something. So kudos to you. Kudos to Coach Etheridge, the whole staff. You have a great staff. They have made it very fun. And boy, I'm looking forward to seeing what recruiting brings and where this thing heads into next year.
Well, I'd like to thank all the Titan fans, alumni, supporters. It was a year that was kind of one of the special things about Titan basketball is just the excitement, the passion for it, the relationships, and so many of those relationships are built around coming to Titan games. It's where I see so many of our that. I mean, just the people that live and die Titan basketball, and we didn't get to experience that as a group this year because of no fans. But the amount of people that reached out at different times through email or text, that I know that we're being supported. Curtis Kelch and the group that did the streaming, Eric Stock, Joel Swanson, who still allowed our supporters to see the games. I just, there's so many people that went into pulling the season off and making it possible. Our athletic trainers for the testing, the amount of work that goes into that, our administration. I mean, it goes on and on and on in terms of everyone who was involved to pull off a season during a pandemic. And so I'm so thankful for all the people that took part in that, as well as all those people that continue to support us from afar. And so we share this championship with all the Titan fans out there, and really keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that next year we can all see each other and enjoy each other's company again for a full Titan season.
Well said. And I'm no Dr. Fauci, but I sure hope that, as this spring and summer plays out, that we get to the point where enough people are vaccinated and herd immunity. And I feel pretty good that by the time the Titans take the floor in November, that the world will look a lot better than it does now. I think we'll have people at the Shirk Center. I think we're going to have a much more, quote, normal season. So couldn't be more excited. Ron, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to be joined by Coach Mike Schauer later in the week. So we're going to get some scoop on the Wheaton Thunder. We're going to get a little scoop on the Thunder and where they stand heading into the offseason. So
You're
you'll have
expanding this whole thing, huh?
Oh, I got some big time guests coming. We're blowing this up. I gave it a name. It's the QCast. So you're the first to hear that name. I came up with a name on the fly. I'm going to roll with it. It's the QCast. And I hope you'll tune in and check it out on occasion.
I will do that. I'm honored to be the first guest. This thing could be huge. I love it, Hugh.
Well, I appreciate it, Ron, and we'll talk soon, okay?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks.